Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome. My name is Neela White. I'm a project director in the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion programs at AAAS, and I will serve as your moderator for our webinar today, Back to School and Out of School in a New Paradigm of Teaching, Learning, and Conducting Research. Today, we have three wonderful speakers who I will introduce you to shortly that will present to you, followed by a period for audience Q&A. Before we begin our presentations, I would like to provide you with a brief on our organization, AAAS, and on the EARN conference. Next slide, please. AAAS is the oldest and largest multidisciplinary science organization in the world. We were founded in 1848 and now currently boast over 200,000 global members. Our mission seeks to advance science, engineering, and innovation throughout the world for the benefit of all people. Additionally, AAAS is the leading publisher of the science family of journals that cover a range of topics such as robotics and translational medicine. In the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Department, we host a number of programs and initiatives, such as the EARN Conference. In addition, we have programs such as Entry Point, which supports undergraduate and graduate students in STEM with disabilities by helping them secure internships, research opportunities, and employment. The Sea Change initiative supports institutional change at the faculty level, and we have a website dedicated to science careers. For more information about AAAS and to learn about our stance on some of the most recent social justice issues, such as Black Lives Matter and Shut Down STEM, please visit our website at www.aaas.org. Next slide, please. Next, I would like to brief you on the Emerging Researchers National Conference in STEM, or EARN, as many of you know. The EARN Conference is led by Dr. Iris Wagstaff, Program Director for Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Programs at AAAS, and is the second largest AAAS convening, with only the AAAS annual meeting having more attendees. The EARN Conference supports about 1,000 STEM undergraduate and graduate students who share their research at our annual conference in Washington, D.C. Students present their research in all areas of STEM and are able to provide either an oral or poster presentation and compete for prize money in their individual STEM categories. The purpose of the conference is really designed to help students hone their science communication skills and presenting and defending scientific data and research. Also, during the 2.5-day conference, the attendees are able to participate in an offering of 30 to 40 professional development workshops. Finally, the EARN Conference offers the Educational and Career Fair, where students learn about research opportunities, internships, fellowships, and graduate school opportunities. The EARN Conference is supported by the National Science Foundation HBCU UP grant under the guidance from our program officers, Claudia Rankin and Michelle Clavel. Before I introduce our panelists, I would like to remind you all that we have a chat box available for our participants. You may want to use the chat to pose any questions for the panelists. At the conclusion of their talks, we will begin the Q&A. And so now I'd like to introduce all of the panelists to you. One of our panelists today will be Linda Ackley. She's the Director of Information Technology Initiatives at the Southeastern University Research Association. As Director of Information Technology Initiatives, Linda Ackley is responsible for facilitating collaborative IT projects supporting research computing. Since joining SURA in 2007, Ms. Ackley has developed workforce development and education programs for national research cyber infrastructure, including TerraGrid and the extreme science and engineering discovery environment. She is frequently called upon to serve in advisory capacity and currently serves on the external advisory board of the NSF-funded Network for Computational Nanotechnology Cypher platform, which operates nanohub.org, and the White House Initiative for Historically Black Colleges and Universities Broadband and Smart HBCU Cluster. She is author and co-author of articles and papers on diversity and inclusion in high-performance computing, workforce development, and education. Ms. Ackley graduated from Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute with a BS degree in computer science and minors in Afro-American Studies and Management Sciences. Linda has also served as a longtime judge for the EARN Conference. Another panelist is Marianne Leung, founder and president of Sustainable Horizons Institute. Dr. Marianne Leung is a nationally acclaimed leader in the design and implementation of innovative programs aimed at developing the next generation of STEM leaders. As an accomplished scientist, Marianne honors and treasures the process of scientific discovery. As the director of major STEM-focused educational programs, Dr. Leung nurtured her passion for connecting students in science by developing and implementing novel and measurably impactful initiatives. As founder of Sustainable Horizons Institute, a 501c3 nonprofit, Dr. Leung leads education, diversity, and inclusion, and workforce development programs, studies, and initiatives across the nation. She serves as the Diversity and Inclusion Department Editor for Computing and Science and Engineering magazine. She was a member of the American Association for the Advancement of Science Committee on Opportunities in Science, our COOS group. She leads webinars for AAAS EARN and was the inaugural Iowa delegate for Vision 2020, a national gender equity initiative. She graduated with honors from Mills College, earning a BA in chemistry with a math minor. Dr. Leung holds a PhD and an MS in computational physical chemistry. Like Linda, and as mentioned previously, Marianne has served as a longtime EARN conference judge and also facilitates our EARN student abstract preparation webinars and our oral and poster presentation webinars. And finally, our third presenter is Dr. Gregory Triplett, Professor and Senior Associate Dean for Academic Affairs at Virginia Commonwealth University. Dr. Triplett is a professor and Senior Associate Dean for Academic Affairs at Virginia Commonwealth University, who oversees all aspects of engineering programs, including curriculum development, student recruitment and matriculation, strategic planning, student funding, graduate research, and online education. At VCU, he directs the Precision Image Research Laboratory, which focuses on the development and integration of nanomaterials and their applications in biomedical, energy, and physical science. He currently leads a team of undergraduate and graduate students to capture signal transduction mechanisms in real time, specifically interactions between amino acid functional groups of proteins with donor molecules and protein kinase using photonic technology integration. He recently completed the Institute for Management and Leadership in Education program at Harvard and is president of VCU's Sigma Xi chapter, lifetime member of NSBE, the National Society for Black Engineers, and a member of many other professional and scientific organizations. He graduated from Florida A&M University, Florida State University, and the Georgia Institute of Technology with a BS, MS, and PhD, respectively, in electrical engineering. Gregory also serves on the EARN Advisory Board. To start our presentations, we will have Gregory Triplett from Virginia Commonwealth University.
All right, let me see my screen.
Yep, we can see it. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Good afternoon. It's a pleasure to be here. So I'm the first of three today. And what I really want to do is sort of jumpstart the conversation on why being active during this period is so important for those of you who are looking to continue along those paths. The way that this is going to be structured is going to be more inspirational, give you a little bit of background. And I hope that at the end of this talk that you'll realize that simulation-based research is in fact the next best thing, and it is required. It's something that everyone is going to benefit from. Can you see the next slide?
Yes.
All right, thank you. All right, so I want everyone to think about simulation-based work, computer-based work, and just think for the next 10 seconds, one word, how you would describe it. I'll just give you 10 seconds. All right, did any of these terms come to mind? Efficient, complex, tedious, ideal, repeatable. In fact, simulation and computer-based work is all of these things. Uh, I think it's also important to realize what our world would be without it. So in a similar exercise, how would you describe our future with limited simulation and computer-based work? And I'll give you 10 seconds to think about that as well. What I want everyone to learn from this particular workshop is that computer and simulation-based work is critical for our future. So we're going to talk about some examples of where it has played an important role. I also want to be clear that there is opportunity for everyone to be involved. So some of the things we'll cover, how to find those data sources, some examples of open research questions. And I hope that at the end you realize that all of this falls into a much bigger picture. It is how do we address social challenges? How do we address grand challenges? And how are we going to be good stewards of data and utilize best practices? When you think about the mission of AAAS, it is to advance science and serve society. This particular webinar very much in line with those goals, where we aspire to help all attendees to understand the breadth of the research opportunities while social distancing. Since I am in the senior associate role at Virginia Commonwealth, I indeed understand um, the um, the challenges with keeping all of our students engaged. I think one thing is true, and we have to really think about this and understand that the human capital is the most important thing. It is our greatest asset. And what do I mean by that? Well, basically, it's the economic value of your experience and your skills, things like education, training, skills, and your health. And so when we think about involving ourselves in computer-based work, simulation-based work, we realize it is not necessarily the outcomes, it's the experiences that we're building that helps us identify which tools are going to be important for the next generation. So why is simulation-based research more important now than before? Well, when you look at, for example, the National Academy of Engineering, I'm an engineer, so pardon my reference, but this is important to me, is that the National Academy has defined grand challenges. And these are specific barriers that they would like for the new generation to tackle. These barriers are important because when you overcome them, you improve quality of life. You can create opportunities. We do them at VCU for solving problems such as food access, which is important in many communities. When you think about what it means to be involved in engineering and science, we understand that there have been tremendous achievements, and a lot of people don't get credit for it, right? And they've become so commonplace that we take them for granted. And so, in some ways, the National Academy made an attempt to try to become to try to generate a coherent message. That means get engaged. And they created these lists of grand challenges that have 4 cross-cutting themes, and they involve sustainability. We understand why that is extremely important. They involve health, security, and the joy of living. To take this a little bit further, I want you to think about ways in which you could improve quality of life. We can narrow that down. We can be exploratory. We can look at some hidden opportunities. We can look at vulnerabilities. These links, and again, this would be provided to you, but they actually take you to maybe a little snapshot from my experts of what it means to involve yourself in these areas where you can impact quality of health and also the joy of living. So I encourage you, once this is over and these slides are provided, to explore these links among the others that are available. So let's talk a little bit about the opportunity that is available through simulation-based work. So when you think about it, simulation-based work really allows you to do a few things. It allows you to predict, and this is extremely important for decision making. This is the most practical way that people think about simulation-based work. You think about the stock market. You think about different technologies and the impact of those technologies on the environment. But there are other ways in which it also plays a role, and that includes it allows you to explain. And what I mean by that is that you can explain from a scientific perspective the relationships between independent, controllable variables and even dependent responses. And we use this a lot in the classroom. It's very good in education. But the other thing simulation-based research also allows you to do, it allows you to explore in a different way, where you can answer very diverse research questions that could not be answered, whether it's feasible, whether it's safe, ethical, or maybe in a timely fashion. So when you think about simulation-based work, it touches every important part of our social being, but it also talks about things that we're concerned with. And so I think that's important. We must consider it. So here's a case that I'm going to lay out. If in fact you're interested in simulation-based work, let's look at it from a new challenge perspective. New challenges are arising in computational methods for modeling and simulation that create new research problems that must be addressed. For those of you who use technologies like artificial intelligence, neural networks, even math concepts like fuzzy logic, you understand exactly what I mean. But it also allows you to look at the unclear impact of new policies and technologies. And there are a few examples on the evolution of cities. When you look at creating new opportunities for families, you got to consider water, transportation, and energy. You need to consider the route to the nearest school. You need to consider if there is access to food in a local region. This is important. These are basically modeling problems waiting to be solved. You can also look at things like changing human behaviors. These emerge from new phenomena, and these are things that are not well understood. And lastly, and most of all, most people use simulation-based work as a research tool. It leads to a better understanding of critical elements for conducting scientific research. We all know that controlling variables are key. So, why should researchers participate in simulation and computer-based research? What you see on this slide is a Wordle from last year's EARNS conference. And what do you see? You see a lot of these terms that come up: synthesis, analysis, human studies. What's really interesting is everything that you've done as a member of the EARN conference, it has allowed you to build in certain things into your toolbox. And that toolbox includes things like creativity. We all know what that means when you're writing your abstract and you're performing specific research projects. It teaches you how to communicate. That's something that's very important that we all must do as researchers. Persistence, judgment, and organization. I would consider these to be some essential skills for every researcher, whether you're an undergraduate or a graduate student. But when you think about simulation-based research, it's a whole new thing. It allows you to really tap into what I consider to be next generation technologies, new mathematical concepts. You can explore these things in a way that make it feasible, and it's extremely cost effective. So I believe everyone can be involved. So what is the best way to get involved? Well, you have to consider open research questions, which is really interesting. And I think about this a lot. I think about it with my kids. I think about it with my colleagues. And I always ask myself these questions all the time. And then I pare that down a little bit further. What do I see myself doing? Not everything I think about I'm interested in pursuing, but I also consider what is it that that I can do? How can I contribute? Then I also think about what is it that impacts me now. There are a few areas that I, just kind of thought up in preparation for this talk, and they included things like health and rehabilitation. Environmental is very important to me. Human behavior, the brain, nanotechnology, which is really it's my research home, and also city life. So I just brainstormed and came up with 6 topics, right? And so just assume that I'm not an expert in any of these. And I thought, hey, is there an opportunity for me to participate in simulation-based research or computer-based research? All right, so here goes. I use Google because Google is very good, right? So the first thing you have to know how to do is you have to learn how to search and find information. So I looked, and voila, look at what I found. They actually have an open simulation community from the the National Center for Simulation and Rehabilitation Research. And what's really cool about this is that it's free and it's open source. Tools are available and you can use them to study things like musculoskeletal modeling, simulation analysis of tendon transfer surgery, and you even get to dive into inverse kinematics and inverse dynamics, which is really important from an educational point of view. Stanford has established they've established this center to equip the rehabilitation research community with state-of-the-art simulation tools that enables investigators to complement experimental studies of human performance. What does that look like? Well, it actually looks like this, right? So this is your typical, control map where you can look at every single aspect of movement, right? You get to look at the neural commands, how it connects to the muscular tendon dynamics. This is all available in a simulated platform. So if you're not an expert, but you want to dive into this, this is a great tool for you to use. So what does it really look like? Well, if you wanted to dive a little bit deeper, you can look at these in a completely different way, right? There are these mathematical representations that really allows you to explore. So if this is your space, do a Google search. Look at this open simulation community. There's room for you here. One of the other things I thought about was GIS data, right? So everyone is interested in our ecosystems, which includes, water, natural hazards. You can think about remote sensing, everything, right? And so with this particular tool, and this is just a Google search, there are a lot of things that you can collect real data, verifiable data. And the only information you need is the topic, the location, and the year. So I basically took advantage of what's happening around us and said, hey, what's going on with the hurricanes? Well, it's not Sal anymore, but you get the point. So I looked at Louisiana and was like, hey, is there real data that I can get? You absolutely can, right? You don't need to be in a research lab to be able to think creatively and to understand if there's anything that you can do while, working remote that actually adds to your toolbox. The other thing that you can do, if you're interested, is you can use that same data and you can look at like the wildfires that are existing in California. So this was really interesting to me. And again, I'm not an expert in this area, but I decided, let's just see what kind of data you can provide. Well, I actually get to look at a particular region. And this map shows San Francisco. It actually gives you the scale, and there's a lot of topographical data here. You can go even further and you can look by the counties. And if you want to go deeper, you can go at the street level. So for those of you who are looking for different data sets to test out your theories, to look for patterns, to understand if any of this is connected to policy or practices, this data is also there for you. So again, getting back to some of my thoughts, I said, hey, let's see if there's any open research out there on behavioral risk factors. So again, I asked questions. I'm like, hey, does race, gender, age, and education matter in oral health? Now, this was particularly interesting because I thought with everybody being at home in COVID, what is it that we're all doing? Grazing. We are grazing the kitchen. We're eating all the time. And I thought, I wonder if any of this is having any, health issues. So I decided to see if there was any oral health data. Surprise, surprise, the CDC actually has some of this data available. So I did a quick study. I looked at Alabama. It was arbitrary. And I decided to ask a few questions like, do people actually go to the dentist? And I was curious, if in fact there was a big distinction between those who were educated and those who were not. Went a little bit further, I could see the actual tables. I get to pull raw data. I get to do it by age. Pretty cool stuff. What I did realize is that if in fact you are educated, you're more likely to go to the dentist, with the exception of one particular group, those who have high school education. Really interesting. I have to say that I'm not an expert in this, but again, if you're looking for raw data, this is available for every single state in the union. So please take a look at it. The other thing that I thought about was, neural probes, because I'm very interested in that. I work in nanomaterials. So I'm wondering, how far along are we actually able to model the brain? Well, it turns out that there are 4 big challenges in brain stimulation, and people are using computational tools to explore them. So let's take a look at the 4 challenges, right? They include, scale of the brain, complexity of the brain, speed of the brain, and integration. So I'll touch on one specifically. Let's talk about the scale. Did you know that there were 100 billion neurons and 1,000 trillion synapses working in parallel? That sounds like a really sophisticated computer network, right? That's an experiment you can't run, right? What is it that we can do now? Well, we can simulate point neurons, around 4 million of them, right? So that's kind of where we are. That's the reality check. Looking ahead, there are some things that you can do, and this is just prime for simulation-based research. It is, how do you actually model more how the brain functions? Right now, they look at electrical spiking, but there's so much more information that is there. And it is right, because anyone can tap into that. So I encourage everyone to consider those open research questions and take a look at it. Here's a recent paper where they looked at the fundamental challenge that remains to understand how the brain structural wiring supports cognitive processes, right? And they use basically simulation-based tools to understand the physics of the brain networks. Really cool stuff. In my specific area, nanotechnology, these are tried and true techniques that is available, right? NanoHub is, I think we're going to get into that in the next speaker. It's an open and free platform, right? And I want to make sure that I emphasize, when you go into this area of simulation, computer-based work, there is a lot of information that is free and available for the user. So you don't need to have any money. You don't need to have an account. It's free, and they're looking for help. I actually corresponded with one of the leaders from the NanoHub, and they were very enthusiastic that we were making this more known to the broader community. The NanoHub does things like they have short courses, they have animations, teaching materials. So if you're interested from a research perspective, great. But it's also a good educational tool. One of the examples that I found just searching the web was, you can look at things like new design rules of nature-inspired nanostructures, right? Tremendous amount of papers that are out there, all based on simulation work, looking at things like, how do I sort of probe these atomic structures? Are there things that we can do, like create these peptoid nanosheets? I mean, it really gets me excited that if I were in this field, there are a number of resources available. So I'm going to bring this to a close and talk about something that is a little bit more relevant to all of us, because I know I talked about the nano area, I talked about some of the kinematics and the muscular areas, but there's also something that we realize, and that is our cities have systematic challenges, right? We've heard it from the opioid epidemic, we've heard about access to food, access to healthcare. Turns out that these are really interesting problems because people are moving to certain cities, the infrastructure is constantly aging. People built bridges 50 years, 100 years ago, and they were only supposed to last for 50 years. So we're already like extending their service life. But what we can do as engineers and scientists is to realize that data is everywhere. We can measure and sense almost everything. So these are some examples, right? There are 30 billion RFID tags embedded in our world and across ecosystems. 85% of new cars contain event data recorders collecting travel information, including video. We have 1 trillion connected devices in the Internet of Things, and we have 15 petabytes of new information generated every day. And we have to figure out what useful information is inside of it. From a social perspective, looking at how we interact with each other, we can do better if we understood what those problems and if we were to use technology as a cool tool. So smart city services is an example, and let's just make it plain. We all use these the apps online that helps us get from one place to the other. And they are based on crowdsourcing, where you can do things like traffic awareness, traffic analytics, prediction. These are essential examples, right? That really teaches us what you can do without having to be in the lab. What you can do when you're sitting at home. Use the tools that are available. Find an open research question. If you're getting this data, it's also important that you understand your responsibility. We have a role. And as a data steward, you are absolutely responsible for understanding data access rules. And they basically include 3. I mean, these are the ones I'm just going to sort of round out. 1, you must understand both internal and external access rules. That means if you're getting information, you must know where it came from, you must know how it's curated, and you must cite them. As a data steward, you must take into consideration things like the Freedom of Information Act, the Privacy Act, IT security issues that can impact your data. And you also must be sure to assess very early in the data collection process if anything you're collecting is sensitive and or restricted from access either inside or outside the organization. These are very standard practices. So when in fact you get into this world of computer-based simulation, we also have rules. Just like if you worked in a research lab, a physical lab, you also have rules. You have guidelines that govern what I would say is good behavior. So I want to thank you for the opportunity to provide this introduction to simulation and computer-based research. I hope that I gave you some examples that allows you to think more broadly. And again, I just brainstormed and came up with several, hoping that I touched a number of different topics. And I think what you'll find is that there's enough opportunity for everyone. I appreciate your time. If you want to follow me on Twitter, because I make comments about any and everything, mostly science, feel free to do so. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Gregory. That was really fascinating. I'm definitely going to see the CDC website to see my contribution to uh, what has happened with Corona, and because I definitely have been grazing throughout the Corona pandemic, spending a lot of time in the kitchen, a lot more than what I need to.
We all
But
have.
thank you again for sharing.
Thank you.
Um, Before we introduce our next presenter, Linda Ackley, I want to make sure the audience knows that we do have the opportunity for you all to provide questions in our chat box. As the questions come up, you do not have to wait for the Q&A to put the questions in. You can put the questions directly in the chat box for us, and we will use those questions during the Q&A period. Next up, we'll have Linda Ackley from Southeastern University's Research Association. Hi, Linda, you're muted. Hi, Linda. This is Neela again. I'm sorry, we can't hear you with the audience. Can you just double check to see if you're unmuted, please? Hi, audience. Give us one moment. We're sorting out the audio issues, but we should be back on and running shortly. Thanks so much for your patience.
Can you guys hear me now?
Yes, Linda, we can hear you.
Okay, I think my
Perfect.
mic went out for some reason, so I apologize if you get a little bit of background noise. All right, so is my screen being shared or yours is being shared now? And now can you still hear me?
We can still hear you and we see your screen. It just needs to go into presenter view and then we're ready.
Okay, great. Don't know why my headset just went out. Okay, all right. I want to thank Gregory for that lead-in. He covered the really broad aspects, and hopefully he's gotten you very excited, because he got me really excited with those open questions. What I'm going to cover that I hope that you leave my part of the talk with is how do students engage in this process, what resources are available to you, and how you can actually get access. So I am representing the Extreme Science and Engineering Discovery Environment. It's a fancy name, and I'll talk a little bit what its mission is. What I wanted to say first is, because I speak a little bit more broadly than just modeling and simulation, is we speak about advanced computing, and I want to make sure we know what that actually means. This is actually a list and a picture taken from the National Science Foundation's draft blueprint for a national cyber infrastructure ecosystem, which was developed, this report was developed back in 2019. And what you can actually see in the ecosystem is the fact that there are computing resources, there's software. You heard a bit about the data side of it as well, just before in Gregory's talk, but it also means the instruments that generate data. For those of you who are doing biology, that could be genomic sequencers. If you're using sensors, it's collecting data about an environment. There's data coming down from satellites that is being collected. So all of those instruments that are generating tons of data that we didn't have before. So you've got your instruments, and then of course you've got the networking that connects all of this together, the security issues, and then last but not least of all, very important to this is the people, organizations, and the communities. And so all of those things, cloud computing, data intensive computing, parallel computing, traditional supercomputing, data analytics, data mining, data science, visualization, modeling and simulation, all really fall under this great big heading of advanced computing. And one of the other, for the National Science Foundation's perspective, is they're also talking about, when you think in terms of larger scale, these are resources that are usually too expensive for you to have housed in your lab, in an individual research group, your department, and in many cases, even at an institution. And that's why there is a need for the national cyber infrastructure. So what is EXCEED, the Extreme Science and Engineering Discovery Environment? We are actually a project funded by the National Science Foundation to knit large pieces of that ecosystem together. We basically integrate a diverse set of resources, which I'll talk about later, people, software, and machines, and a variety of services to make sure that these resources are available to the academic research community and really are easier to access, prevent people from having to know, where do I need to go to a specific supercomputing center? Do I need to go to my campus? Where do I need to go to actually get access? Our goal is to make it seamless. So we're charged with the integration, the training, education, outreach, and all of the support services that go around the wrap around all the various resources that the National Science Foundation invests in. Now, one of if you've been around a long time, you may have heard of our predecessor, which is TeraGrid. And in another couple of years, the name may change from Exceed to something else because NSF does rebid this every 10 to 12 years. But the real ultimate bottom line is the National Science Foundation is committed to a continual investment of providing these resources to the academic research community, which means they are free to you for open science, open research. And what is our underlying mission? And you see lots of different pretty pictures on this slide. We are really here to enable research productivity. And I say that meaning that we're not asking you to become programmers. I saw Gregory showed NanoHub and a variety of other tools that you can use. So you don't have to become a coder to do this work. Our goal is that you're productive in your research. You are able to publish, you're able to gain insight, you're able to, meet the goals of your research project. And so we try to wrap around as much as possible the services and support to make sure that you are successful in your research and that these resources are actually enabling your productivity. So there were a lot of interesting open questions that Gregory posed. The history of supercomputing in itself is it came out of the physics community, but now you can see a lot of other communities are embracing the use of advanced computing resources, biomedical, looking at breast cancer research, understanding HIV, most recently looking at COVID-19. There's climate and environment. For those of you who watch the weather and care about the weather on the news, that may be the only thing I ever watch when I watch the news. When they talk about different models, the US model versus the European model, when they're talking about looking at the tracks of hurricanes, all of that is being done on these large scale resources. Additionally, there's other kinds of things you might look at in climate change, like identifying genes and changes in species and different animals due to climate change. You may be looking at things like water security, and even food security can be associated with that. And last, we've really expanded out to supporting humanities and social sciences. It's kind of obvious in some ways to understand how social sciences has jumped on the bandwagon because of the amount of data they're beginning to work with, particularly when they're looking at societal issues, social change, social movements. They're using a lot of data from social media, from Twitter, from Facebook, from a variety of sources, and it's the scale of that data that drives them to the larger scale resources. I know a project on here called 6 Degrees of Francis Bacon. It's actually a network analysis model that looks at all the relationships between a variety of authors and people in society during the time Francis Bacon was an author. But that actual tool can be applied in other ways, not just to Francis Bacon. For more really interesting stories about the kind of science that Exceed has supported, I've included this link so that you can take a look, because it goes on for about 25 pages or so. Just from a scale perspective, we've supported something like $259 million worth of research over the 10 years that we've been in operation. From all of those, I want to kind of point out here, what have students done? Because those sound like he mentioned grand challenges. The National Academy has identified grand challenges. National Science Foundation has identified grand challenges. A lot of those problems that I mentioned on the previous slide, they're pretty big, they're pretty lofty, they're pretty weighty. So you as a student, how can you do that? How can you be engaged? So it is easy for students to be engaged. And in fact, it's very common for students to be engaged in the work. This is an example of a student from University of Puerto Rico at Mayagüez who participated in one of Exceed's student programs. And I'll explain that program a little bit later as one way of how you can get access and be engaged. And he looked at visualizing fluid flows, and he actually created a virtual reality environment to do this using the Unity game engine. And he ran on Stampede 2 in Texas, which is actually one of the largest academic supercomputers in the world. And that led to his ability to actually present and publish. And he did present at the American Physical Society. And that was a project that I believe he spent less than a year on, because the Empower internships are usually for a semester. This example, we also have a program, and Gregory ended with talking about being able to address societal challenges. We have a program called Advanced Computing for Social Change, and it also goes by the name of Computing for Change. And this is an example of a student, Alejandra Garcia, from Cal State University in Los Angeles, and she participated in our event in supercomputing last November, and our theme was maternal and infant morbidity and mortality. And she did a data dive, and her question was, how does the language that you speak impact your birthing experience, specifically with birth hysterectomies? A lot of times students' questions are driven by something that's happened in their family or their community. And so she was able to do this data-driven analysis, derive some insights, and she had a presentation. And in this particular case, this is supercomputing, which is about a 8 to 10,000 person conference, and that is the theater on the exhibit floor. And she did a lightning talk in the theater, and that was a pretty exciting opportunity. But that is just a different type of example from the previous student's activity. This is the one I really love to highlight. He was the earned first place undergraduate computer science poster winner last year. And it turns out that when he was interviewed, his story started in 2019, even though he won in 2020. He was encouraged by a friend at EARN in 2019 to apply for an REU, which is a research experience for undergraduates. And he ended up applying to this one called JetStream REU. And he did work on using machine language to identify frog calls. And if you get a copy of this presentation, the link is live and you can see his talk about that. And so he presented after the REU at 2 other conferences. So he was pretty much a pro by the time he got to EARN, and he just knocked our socks off at EARN this past February. And so again, another case, and in this case, he was in a research experience. So those are just 3 students I really wanted to highlight, just show what students actually have been able to do. This is the next part. I'm going to kind of cover what are these resources that I'm talking about, and going back to my original, my opening on advanced computing. This is a slide about the physical computing resources. And these are some of the largest and fastest supercomputers in the world. But they all have their different purposes. They all support different types of software, and they're all optimized for different reasons, in different ways. And these are all way too large for anybody to have on their desktop, in their lab, in their department, or on their campus. And so that's why NSF is invested in these, and we manage the access to them. Bridges is at the Pittsburgh Supercomputing Center, and it is that description gives you a little bit of a hint of what it does. But Pittsburgh has both their computers, that one and the Anton one that's down in the bottom right corner. Those are really strong biomedical systems that support a lot of biomedical research. You can see Anton in the lower corner actually is looking at motion and activity of larger biomolecules over long time spans. but both those computers have a lot of resources specifically in the biomedical area. Jetstream has a fancy title, but it's basically a cloud environment. Expanse and Comet, you can see there's a wide range of software that's available. One of the things you'll note, you'll see down there with Expanse, MATLAB. Almost all of the Exceed machines do provide access to MATLAB. MATLAB is our one and only commercially available software that's consistent across our platforms. Generally, you'll see, if you notice, Amber, NAMD, some of these other ones, TensorFlow, and various programs, they're all open source because this is free to the community, and we're looking to support open research. If you're planning to patent, this is not the place to come. Stampede 2 is your traditional supercomputing platform. And over time, there's 6 new machines that NSF has just provisioned that will be added to this pool. So there's a lot of power, a lot of machines. In addition to the machines, we also offer storage. That's always a problem. You've got data sets, you've got to put them somewhere. If you are a PI and you have a project, the National Science Foundation and other agencies also require a data management plan. And you have the other issues that Gregory mentioned about data stewardship and making sure that privacy and all of those things are protected. Exceed is able to provide support for HIPAA type data sets if you're doing medical research, and for the variety of other types of privacy issues. We do not support classified work. You would have to go to the Defense Department for that. But we do offer several types of storage. You can have access independent of having time on one of our computers, or you can have it with a request for a project on a computer system. The last 3 that I think are kind of interesting in terms of offerings from Exceed, we're all hyper aware of COVID-19. If you recall, there was a White House announcement about a high performance computing consortium that was stood up to support COVID-19 research. That was announced by the White House, I want to say like in late March. It consists of partners from industry as well as Department of Energy, National Science Foundation. When that was stood up, no one had the experience of how do you actually provide the access, vet the proposals, and do this in a consistent way across the variety of resources that were being offered to the research community. So Exceed ended up being the lead opening for that, and we provide a weekly report to the National Science Foundation on that. And so we are supporting there's about 89 projects being supported right now. Some are on Exceed resources, some are out in industry, some are at Department of Energy. The second item on this slide that is really important is a lot of times people get introduced to supercomputing and they're on their own. This is, we provide something called Extended Collaborative Support Service, which allows you to request human help. And you can do that when you request time on a machine, or you can do that when you get your project going and realize you're in over your head. We actually pair our staff with your research team to help you work through your problem and make sure you're successful. And the last thing we do offer, we do have some public data collections. This has a lot of things on it. I'm not going to talk about NanoHub because Gregory already talked about it, but Science Gateways is what NanoHub really is. It's one of the science gateways, and it provides the front end for researchers so that they don't have to know the ins and outs of how do you interact with a supercomputer. Do I have to know Linux, Unix, line commands to launch a job? I just want to get my work done. So Science Gateways are a browser-based interface, which usually has a collection of data sets that you might want to use, software tools that you're typically going to use for that community and that particular discipline. And also may even have workflows set up for you. And as Gregory mentioned, also will have teaching materials as well. So they're used for both research and teaching. And so I want to show one student example, because this is how easy a Science Gateway is to use. This is an old example from a gateway called Cypress, which is Cyber Infrastructure for Phylogenetic Research. And it's a very active, one of our most active science gateways. This is a 15-year-old high school student who won his state science fair. He got no help from anybody, no staff at Exceed, none of the staff at the Supercomputer Center at San Diego, where this is housed. And he won his science fair, and he worked on a map of how HIV spreads. And so that's really just to illustrate how simple it is to access a gateway. And again, gateways like Exceed Resources are free. So I mentioned a lot of resources in addition to the gateways, and some of it you do need training for. And so one of the things we do offer that's free and it's easy for students to access at any time, we offer a catalog of training where you can do asynchronous training when you're not already Zoom fatigued. I know it's tough, but if you need to spin yourself up on Python or R, or just know what some of these things mean, you can access that training. We have a course calendar where you can register for upcoming training webinars. And then we also do come to campuses. So I've met students there when we've come to campuses to do hands-on. A lot of our training is very hands-on to really get you comfortable and familiar with using the tools and being in this type of environment. So I mentioned that the first student, Santiago, was an Empower student. We have an internship opportunity. It is offered the fall, spring, and summer. And these are projects, they're computational, data analytics, visualization. They can also actually be networking and system maintenance type projects. Mentors submit projects to us, students apply. We pair the students with a project. You are actually compensated in addition to learning an awful lot. At the bottom end, it's $650. It's up to $6,000. It's really based on the student level, the needs of training that they might have, and the duration of the project. Project proposals from mentors should contain a training plan for the student, because it is our goal for the student to be developed. These are to be research type experiences, and they do get access to the various systems in Exceed through this program. We are on our 5th cohort. We've had about 120 students participate, and all of them have really enjoyed their experience. And if you come in at the very bottom level, and you can come back in again as you progress till you move up to a higher level, you can be a repeat participant in that way. We also really encourage your faculty members, your research mentors, to submit the projects to us and then have you apply. So that's another way for them to kind of give you some additional compensation and be able to allow you to support and participate on their project. Getting access to Exceed resources. There's a kick to this, because I'm going with this is a mostly student audience. NSF fellows are the only students eligible who can actually get direct access to Exceed on their own. Science gateways are the only other way to allow you to get access without a faculty principal investigator. So what do? I told you all this really cool stuff, these great resources, some exciting projects with great interesting outcomes, and you're saying, well, how do I get in? How do I get in the game? Well, way to do that is the first one and the easiest one is attend a hands-on training workshop. You can see those on our training calendar. We generally will give, we have a set aside time on the machine for training workshop participants. A lot of times we leave that up for 2 weeks to several months. It's a way to at least get acclimated before you go bigger. However, I will admit to, we did a training at Morgan State. A Howard University student attended at the request of a his NASA project mentor, and we did not close that down after the training, and that student actually completed their research for their NASA project using our training allocation. Our time set aside for that workshop because we forgot to close it down. We found another case at Spelman College where a student continued to use the time that was available on the machine after the workshop was over. So that is one way to get some access. Another way is to participate in an Exceed Empower internship or a research experience for undergraduates at an Exceed site, or a research experience for undergraduates at any site that will include computation, modeling and simulation, data visualization, data analysis is as part of the experience. Those are really good because they are such a full service wraparound in most cases. They will help you learn how to present. They will do a lot of additional professional development. So it becomes a very well-rounded experience. And we see a lot of our youth students as presenters in the poster sessions at EARN. If you have a bigger project and you're really working with a faculty advisor or a research mentor, urge them to request the time on Exceed. Generally, what we see is the faculty PI makes the request. They give us their project description. We say, yes, go forth, and you can have access. And what happens is it's the students that do the work anyway. So it really is a good opportunity if you can get them to make the request. And the request is, they make that assuming you need some time to do some type of computation. The last one is if you're at a campus, an institution that has an Exceed Campus Champion, and I put the link on the slide so you can check for your institution to see if they do have a champion. They can help give you access for small usage to get started. So those are the ways as a student you would actually be able to access the resources that Exceed offers. Remember, they're free for open science. We see a lot of student use. I believe we serve something like 4,000 students a year that are participating on a variety of projects. Some of them are Exceed, some of them are from other sources. So that hopefully you have seen some good examples. You've got a sense of there's an awful lot of resources out there, but you're going to have to take a look and do a little poking and do that Google search as Gregory was mentioning. And hopefully this helps to answer some of your questions of how you might get access to these type of systems. And thank you so much for listening.
Thank you so much, Linda. It was great to hear about Exceed and all the information that you shared. Our final presenter is Dr. Marianne Leung from Sustainable Horizons Institutes.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the webinar. I'm delighted to be here and be part of this. I love what everyone else has presented so far, and it's been a great introduction to this field. I hope you're super excited about it. There's so many opportunities and so much exciting work that you can do. So what I'm going to do is actually, talk about some specific opportunities for you to get involved in terms of getting funding to do things. Iris did a wonderful job in picking the speakers. So I'm going to go over briefly kind of this topic of computational science and engineering You know, I think you've gotten a really great background from Gregory and Linda about what it's all about and what different kinds of things you can do with it. So I'm just going to briefly do that. And I'm going to talk specifically about some opportunities that we have that for you to get funding and get involved in some of these things, some of these activities. So, so the ways to conduct scientific research. So nowadays we talk about, you know, originally we talked about there were two ways to do it, experiment and theory. And now the third pillar of fundamental research is considered computing. It's a relatively new approach. I mean, in terms of science, you know, a few decades. But, you know, we're getting to the point now where it used to be kind of like to supplement the experiments and theory work. Now it's kind of taking the lead, which is very often, which is really super exciting. As Linda mentioned, you know, supercomputers and large computing systems are available and often used to advance this research. As you've already seen, you can just basically apply this to all areas of science and engineering, and there's just a plethora. Everything you could think about trying to study, you can use computing to do that. And just a brief review of course, you've heard a lot about simulation and how that happens, where you're using mathematical equations and computer programs and, you know, nice open source tools like Linda described. And in this case, you know, they're simulating the airflow out of an airplane. Of course, there's modeling, which you've seen examples of. Here's protein structures. There's machine learning is a really, you know, hot kind of new field. You've probably heard a little bit about it, and I'll talk some about it. And that's where we're using artificial intelligence capabilities to understand lots of things. And then, of course, there's traditional, there's also data analysis. And as was previously mentioned, there's more and more data that's being available in all different areas. And it's a big challenge to analyze that data. So I'm going to talk about a few specific examples of the kind of research that you can do and some of the people that have done it. And these are for specific programs that we run at Sustainable Horizons. And I'll tell you a little bit more about the programs coming up. So this is an example of a faculty student team that went to this program is we run with the Department of Energy National Lab at Lawrence Berkeley. And so they came to the team. They came to the lab, Dr. Isabel Camacho Brown and her two students, Sergis and Daniel, and they worked on this problem, which was data modeling and estimation of urban transport and transportation networks. It was a very, very cool project. Here's another example of a team from Hood College where they worked on predictive modeling of medical data, and that medical data was to help prevent suicide amongst veterans. And this is a really impactful program, and they've gotten funding directly from the VA to work on this, and the VA is actually adopting their results into their suicide prevention projects. Here's another project where, you know, we've applied the knowledge. So Tiffany Holmes and her student worked at the lab, and she's in the chemistry department. So you might think you have to be sitting in a, you know, computer science or math department to do this. No, she's a chemist. And she used her chemistry knowledge with her student and then some machine learning techniques to try to understand some things about some drugs and what kind of effects they would have. And here's another project, a team from the University of Puerto Rico, Mayagüez, and they again were using deep learning, which is a certain form of machine learning, to understand structural biology. So you can see it's like a plethora of different types of problems you can tackle. And we're really excited to be supporting this work. So now I'm going to tell you a little bit about what the programs that these teams were involved in and others. And this program is called Sustainable Research Pathways. And the main idea is we're trying to build connections with this particular lab, and I'll tell you a little bit about what this lab is, because a lot of people don't know about the Department of Energy National Labs. And it was to try to help promote diversity and research collaborations. So Berkeley Lab is one of 17 U.S. Department of Energy National Labs. So it's run by, the Department of Energy. They have all these research labs across the United States. And they do a lot of mission-driven research, but they also do a lot of basic research. So that's the Lawrence Berkeley National Lab. So back to the Sustainable Research Pathways. So the whole idea is to try to build relationships that are centered on research collaborations through supporting faculty and students from underrepresented backgrounds. The components of the program are, we start out with a matching workshop that we hold in December, and normally we would hold that in person. We would, fund people to come out to the lab and to meet with staff scientists. Of course, given the COVID situation, this year it will be virtual. And then, so people come together and they talk, they learn about opportunities and research that they can get involved in. And then there's a matching process. So if the teams match up with the staff scientists, then you're considered you're a match, and you're invited to develop a proposal to actually come back the following summer, to do a research experience. And this is for, faculty and graduate students at U.S. academic institutions. So there are 2 tracks. We're really excited. We're going into our 6th year of this program. And so this year we added a student track. So the way they work is that the first step is for the workshop. And so faculty can apply to attend the workshop, but they would apply with the intention of bringing students to the lab with themselves. So that would be a faculty-student team, or they can send students on their own for the summer internship. Now this year we added, because we've had so much great response from this and people really interested in this, getting involved in this program, a student track, so students can apply on their own as well. So as a student, you have 2 options. You can come with your faculty mentor, or you can go on your own. And again, the faculty could kind of represent you at the workshop, or you can try to represent yourself and go through the process of matching. Some of the research areas that are happening at the lab are shown here, and they range again through all the various different areas. There's, if you go to our website, which I'll share a link with you in a minute, you can get more details about all the different opportunities in terms of topics. So the key dates that we have for this program are that, first of all, we have an application that is active. So we have a call for participation, but it's closing soon. So if you're interested in getting involved in this, you need to go ahead and take action and put in an application. And then in December, what will happen is we're going to have a reception on December 1st. And then the matching workshop is really just the following day. It's all day long, and that's where we bring people together. And it's really fun and crazy that the scientists present their research, the attendees present their research. There's speed matching, and we have poster sessions, and so it's really cool. And this year, since we added the track of students on their own, they all have a session on the 3rd where they can present their posters and go through the match and have one-on-one meetings and match. So there's the links to just general information about the program, and then the actual application. And then if you apply and you get funded through this program, you'll come back. Well, you go to the lab, hopefully depending on the situation with COVID next summer. So here's a few alumni in the program. In the interest of time, I'm not going to spend too much time, but just to show you, we've got a variety of people and, teams from different institutions and organizations that have participated. And, it ranges in terms of the levels from community college through, we have HBCUs and HSIs, lots of different organizations. And just a few things people have said about the program and the workshop. There's a professor who has come to the workshop, and she sent her students to the lab for the internship. Anu Trivedi, she's been going back multiple years and is planning on going again. She was on her own. She's an undergraduate student. She's had a fabulous experience. And then we've got Sally Ellenson and Derek Jones from the University of Kentucky. They went back multiple years because the idea is we're trying to do sustainable work and build relationships. So another program we have, and it's open now with an active call for participation, is called the Broader Engagement Program, and it's held at the SIAM, or Society of Industrial Applied Mathematics, Computational Science and Engineering Conference, which I know is kind of a mouthful. But this is a professional conference in the field. And what we do is we run this program where, again, we recruit people from underrepresented backgrounds, and we fund them to attend the conference. Then we put on a lot of special programming to help build community and help people get more out of the conference. So we have an open call for undergraduate and graduate students. I will say that you don't have to already have experience in this area. We've had people who haven't done anything in this field but are really interested, and so you can come and get involved, and there's lots of activities for ways for you to explore. So we do provide travel support for you to attend. So this conference is not until next March. We're hoping that there will be live, in-person opportunities for the conference, but there's also virtual opportunities. So we and the conference are already supporting. If you just don't want to travel and you would prefer to go virtually, that's going to be made available. You get full access to the technical program and all the technical talks. And then if you want to present your own research in relevant areas, we give you an opportunity to do that. We organize tutorials and then also these small learning groups. Here's a quick look at what the agenda for the BE program is. So this is the programming that the BE program kind of organizes at the conference, in addition to everything that you get at the conference. So we have a mentor protege program. We have an opportunity for you to practice your presentation skills. And then we have these tutorials that we're organizing. And those are designed to be, for a student, so kind of entry level, so you can kind of get to understand what is this all about. Most of them also include hands-on activities. So there's this other thing called guided affinity groups, which I'm going to talk about next. And the idea about this is that we wanted to provide ways for students to get more out of the conference, because first of all, conferences, if you've ever been to one, can be kind of intimidating because there's a lot of people. This conference isn't as big as some, but there's usually about 2,000 people at the conference. And so, there's enough for someone to get lost. So we're trying to help people not get lost. And then we also try to help them get more out of the sessions. So what happens with these is, well, first of all, they're led by community leaders, community members who are, their expertise is in the various fields that are represented by the conference. And then you'll meet virtually prior to the conference, and the leaders will give a little tutorial, and then you guys get to start getting to know each other. And these groups are anywhere from 6 to 10 people, so it's much more intimate, and you can get to know each other's. Many of the people who've attended this program have said that they love these groups and that they feel like they've made lifetime friendships with the people that they worked with in their little groups. And then during the conference, every morning before the conference starts, in person, it's over breakfast, you meet and you have the opportunity to ask questions. Your leader will facilitate that, and then you talk about what's happening that day, what sessions you should attend, and then you prepare for a group presentation at the end of the week that you then present to the entire group. So, within the broader engagement program, this year we're going to have 10 different groups, all on different topics. And so we'll bring everyone back at the end of the week, and then people can share and learn what the other groups experienced. So here are the topics, the 10 topics that we have. They're quite diverse in terms of different areas and different techniques. You can see quantum, you've probably heard, that's like a really big topic now. That's really interesting. Open science, Linda talked about that. So there's going to be a session about open science and all different areas. So there's a lot of different areas that you can explore. So here's the important kind of information and links. So the conference itself is in March. Like I say, right, it's scheduled for Fort Worth Convention Center, but there's already commitment to virtual if you don't want to travel. There is an application deadline. It's October 9th, so that's around the corner. Again, don't delay. And then there's some links to the program. So here's a few stories of BE people who have participated and what they have had to say. Again, a diversity of people and institutions. Kayla, I love what she said. She says, life is about taking risks, getting completely out of your comfort zone and learning how to come together. Now, she did not have any computational science background and little computing skills, but she came and she learned about it. She learned about all the opportunities and got extremely excited about it. Another person, Pokita, she was so excited and inspired by the experience and the research. She's a community college student at the time, and she was so excited that she went back to her community college and talked to the faculty and started a local student chapter of the society. And last I heard, there was already 100 students that were, that were part of that student chapter. Here's a couple more participants, Javier Rojas and Aishat. Aishat talked about how it, just she had self-doubts, but this experience really changed herself and provided her a way to find clarity about what she wants to do with her career path. So then last but not least, we're starting a new program and we're really excited about this. It is a virtual research seminar series, and it's through the Department of Energy Computing Research Leadership Council. So in that, there are 8 DOE national labs that are participating, and they want us to help them facilitate getting connected with a lot of minority serving institutions and whatnot. What I call as the unusual suspects. And what's going to happen is that the lab will provide virtual research seminars. We're recruiting institutions to partner with us. So we're going to, have a number of institutions, and then we'll have all these labs. The labs will have talks. The institutions will say, okay, yeah, we want to do this, and here's, you know, our vision is that there's probably already some seminar series that are, that happen at the institution. So let's say you have a regular, weekly research seminar that's open to people in your department or across departments. And then, we'll just provide talks for those seminars. And then we'll kind of go through a matching process. The institutions get to say, well, these are the talks that I'm really interested in having at our institution. And the labs say, yeah, and these are the institutions that we're really interested in working with. And then based on that, we'll create matches, and then we'll facilitate having the seminars, and the speakers will work on that. So if you're interested in getting involved in this, please reach out to me. We're just getting started on this, so we're not officially recruiting institutions yet, but we will be very shortly, within probably a week or two. All right, so with that, those are the opportunities that I have to share with you, and here's some general information and links, and I thank you for your time.
Thank you so much, Marianne. These, resources that you, along with our other presenters, provided was incredibly helpful, and I do hope our audience members do take the time to reach out to all three of you to take advantage of those opportunities. In the interest of time, unfortunately, we are really at the end of our webinar today. I wanted to just give each of you just a quick moment if you have any last final remarks for the audience on some of these out of school opportunities. Is there any last word that you want to share with the audience? I'd give each of you a chance just to make a final remark before we close. Gregory, I'll start with you since you were our first presenter.
Yeah, I would say that there are a lot of open research questions. There's an opportunity to be involved and to be impactful, and that these are great tools. People should take a chance. You're at home. It's COVID. Try to make the best of it.
Thank you so much. Linda, do you have a final remark that you'd like to share? Hi, Linda, do you have any final remarks? And how about Marianne? Do you have anything that you would like to share with our audience before we close out?
I'll echo what Gregory said. Take a chance. It's super fun and exciting work. There's lots of ways to get involved. You can do some things on your own, and if you're interested in getting your toes a little wet further, then apply for some of the programs I described.
Really, yeah. Thank you so much for sharing that. And thank you again to all of our presenters for their great insight. Just a final couple of remarks. The slides in the webinar have been recorded and will be posted on the EARN website in the coming days. So if you want to go back and reference any of the opportunities that were shared by our presenters, you may do so. Look for that probably early next week. And hopefully you'll be meeting the deadlines. I know, Marianne, a lot of your opportunities had some coming deadlines, so hopefully our audience will be able to reach them at that time.
Yes.
We do encourage you to fill out the post-webinar survey that will be emailed to you, and do follow us on Twitter at EARN Conference and at LinkedIn at Emerging Researchers National Conference in STEM. We'll also be posting some of these links that were provided of the opportunities on our social media pages, so that we do get to share that with the audience. Presenters, once again, thank you so much for your presentations today. Audience, thank you all for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you all in the near future. Have a wonderful rest of your day.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.